Hi, I'm Jeffrey Reddick, the creator of the Final Destination film franchise, and we are here with some amazing guests to talk about how to horror. I'd love to introduce our guest, Akela Cooper, who is known for such great genre films as Megan, Malignant, The Nun, but she's also worked in some great side geeky stuff like Star Trek New World and Marvel's Lucas Cage and the Avengers Assembled. And we also have Chad and Carey Hayes, who are known as the Hayes brothers, but they are individuals and greatly talented. They worked on The Reaping, the Conjuring trilogy, House of Wax. They've also got some great stuff outside the genre, Flash, Baywatch, Beastmaster. So I'm really excited to have these people who've done such amazing work in the genre here to talk about how to horror.
Thanks, Jeffrey.
Yeah.
Hello.
Hello. So did everyone have a great Halloween?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Nice, nice. So I'm going to ask some general questions about horror to start off with. There are so many subgenres within the horror genre, and I wanted to ask each of you what you consider a horror film. I'll start with it. I'll give a minute. And I'll start by saying, like, for me, a horror film can go anywhere from like Silence of the Lambs, which a lot of people would consider a thriller, but I think that there are horrific elements in there, to traditional horror films like the ones that we've all worked on. So, just
Gosh, Jeffrey, I would say for me, anything, yeah, outside of thriller, because I understand what you're saying, but when you have that aspect of, oh my God, could this happen to me? That kind of a thing that raises the pulse within your own body, it kind of constitutes the fear factor, and that's what we always. That's what I look for in good horror movies, is what is the actual fear factor. I mean, Hannibal Lecter, hands down, scary, scary, scary. But one of the most powerful horror movies that I've seen is The Strangers, the home invasion movie, because it felt so real, and it scared the living crap out of me, basically.
I think for me, like, it's the intent to cause a specific emotion, most likely fear, or to unsettle you in some way, which the Silence of the Lambs definitely does at multiple points. But I also think it's like horror can be very personal. There are some films where I look at it, I'm like, that's not horror. But to someone else, it literally, like, legitimately unsettles them and scares the shit out of them. So, potato, potato.
Yep.
Yeah, I agree with both you guys. I really feel like anything that gets your blood pumping, get you start sweating a little bit, always, what's coming out of the dark corner, what's behind you, anything to just rev up that fear factor, I think is pretty much in the horror category for me. I mean, it could be what, you're talking about Hannibal Lecter, it could be Aliens, it could be, any of the movies that we do. It just kind of, it's such a broad, honestly, it's such a broad category that gets filled up in so many different ways that, I think collectively it's anything that frightens us could generally be listed, as a certain genre under horror.
Yeah.
And I think part of when we talk about how to horror and we're talking as writers, it's important to kind of start with like what connects us to the genre or what really attracted us to the genre. So I'd love to talk about y'all's first introduction to horror and what really drew you to this genre as something you wanted to write.
I guess
I don't want to always go first.
I'll go. Yeah, I'll go. You know what? For it's always a challenge writing horror for us is, when you write comedy, people laugh. When you write horror, people get scared. And I think to be able to execute that in a way that really gets the response that you want, right? It's like, whoa, that script really scared me. Is such a rewarding thing to do. And Chad and I have done, we've done action movies and Disney movies and, a whole bunch of stuff, but the horror is the one that just keeps on bumping because there's so many categories that you can write in here. But like one of the most successful moments that we ever had, we went to the very first test screening of The Conjuring, and we sat in the back of the theater and we watched the audience watch the movie.
Yep.
And as you're going through it, you're going, okay, are they going to jump here? They don't know what's coming, but we do. And it was so satisfying to see the audience kind of gasp when you want to gasp and be scared or laugh or whatever. So that's just I think that's the personal reward that we get.
Carey, but also to answer your question too, Jeffrey, is our entrance into it was our very first meeting was with a producer named Joel Silver, who did The Matrix, The Weapon, and all that. It was a big deal for us because we were transitioning from TV into film. And we met with Susan Downey and Joel, and they were like, wow, we own this title. It's called House of Wax. Does it mean anything to you? And they were fans of our writing. I don't know what they had read, but we were like, I knew the movie. Carey and I had never seen the movie. But we thought, I bet we could do something. I remember to be in a Vincent Price movie. So they said, well, go away and come back with an idea. And so we left, and then we chose to not actually see the original film because we had heard through our agents that they've been looking for a long time for a take on this. So we figured every writer in the world probably watched the movie and then tried to redo the film in some way. And Carey and I had a personal life experience, which we put into the opening of the film with the roadkill pit that just unnerved us in such a way that we thought, oh, this would be great in a horror movie. And so we actually went away and came back and just pitched what the movie was. And we were so fortunate, we just sold it right on the spot with Joel and Susan. And they said, just go write that movie. And that was our introduction into horror. And then people anticipated it being so successful that suddenly we were the horror writers. We went over to do The Blob with Scott Rudin. And then it just, that kind of was the birth of us in that genre. But like my brother said, we've written a number of films outside of genre, but we're probably most known for, horror films.
Yeah, as we were talking before, a little bit before, Jeffrey, I was like born into genre. Like my parents loved science fiction. My older brother, my older sister loved horror. So everyone just watched everything around me. Like, and I specifically remember my dad watching John Carpenter's The Thing.
Nice.
Like when I was like really, really young. And at a certain point, I started recognizing certain things and I was like, okay, this scares me, but I like it. And as time went on, it's like I just got into horror. I got into Stephen King, I got into Dean Koontz, like R.L. Stine, like all of that. And I started writing from a young age, initially short stories. And then probably around high school, I was like, I'm going to take a crack at, writing a script. And I went to Barnes and Nobles and got like scripts like Clerks and Chasing Amy. Like at one point you could buy like the book versions of scripts. And I just copied what I saw in those. And my first attempt was actually a sequel to The Thing. It was terrible, but I wrote it. And then I just kept writing like original stuff through high school and college. And again, it was all terrible. But then I got into USC and came out here, and I had like really good professors who taught me how to write scripts and how to make them good. And after a while I fell into TV, but I never wanted to like not work in movies. So when I was on Luke Cage, I got the bug again to write features, and I wrote 2 specs, and they were both horror. And my agent sent them around, and that's what got me my meeting at Atomic Monster. And that's what initially led to me getting hired to write Megan.
That's great.
Wow.
What a great story.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah, Nightmare on Elm Street was my iconic movie that got me like into the genre, where I kind of went from liking it to falling in love with it and seeing what all you could do with it. So, and also Stephen King and Clive Barker and Dean Koontz. So it's always interesting to hear how people's past like bring them to this genre. When writing a horror story, when writing a script, everybody has their own personal style about how they kind of approach it. But do you start with concept or characters when you're writing a horror script?
When you go first this time? Take turns.
It depends on what it is. Like I've been starting with the concept. I recently watched In Search of Darkness, and it's a wonderful documentary series on Shudder. And that inspired something in me that I felt was like missing from 80s horror movies. And so it's like, okay, I want to do that. And then another was like watching another horror movie, and I was like, I wonder if those characters had been X. And so that kind of was like, oh, I can take those characters and like call them something else, of course, and do X with them. So yeah, it really is just like, I just have to chase whatever ball my brain throws.
Yeah, it's so interesting. I think Chad and I, we love concepts, like what's the world, what's happened, and that usually drives us to start digging deeper. But you know, to Akela's point, that, you know, you find a character that you love and like, and you light up about it. It's like, how do you take that character and spin it in a different way and go on a different journey? I mean, it's such a fun opportunity. It's interesting because we had when Joel, after we'd done House of Wax, Joel offered us this movie, The Reaping, that we did next, and Hilary Swank was in it, and it was great. It was a great movie, a lot of fun. But when we both read the script, we went, "Oh my gosh, we should change the lead to a female and make it after my aunt." Like you write what you know, right? And our aunt was a missionary in India for 10 years who lost her husband, our uncle, on Easter Sunday, but she never lost her faith. And we went, wow, what if she did? What's that look like? You know, somebody who believed in God and doesn't. Movie opens, she's a miracle debunker. And it's literally her return back to faith. So, you know, that for us was kind of, we liked the concept, but then we understood the character that we wanted to tell the point of view through. So that's when they both came together and went, yeah, we'll do that. That's a good idea.
Or sometimes, I don't know, fellow writers, because sometimes you meet such interesting people that they just end up in your film. Like Carey and I were up in Montana doing research on a smoke jumper movie that we were doing for New Line at Warner's. And we're LA, we get up there for the research, and it's snowing, and we put on our big heavy coats, and we have to walk our 20 yards to go to the office to meet up with these smoke jumpers. And this little Volkswagen pulls up next to us with this girl, and she's like 20, and she hops out and she's in a tank top and running shorts and running shoes. And she looks at us, she goes, "Oh, you must be from LA. And you, the writer's from LA." And we're like, oh my God. And she was just so tough and so interesting that we really molded a character around her in that film. And so a lot of times you're inspired by moments, but I mean, I kind of agree with Carey in a way that we're Hayes Bros are very concept driven. We love that challenge of, hey, what about XYZ? I mean, the idea of, oh yeah, you're going to come across an alien baby that's going to embed itself in your stomach, and oh, by the way, it completely grows, and then its blood turns, you know, it just evolves and gets bigger and better. So I guess both ways to really answer the question. Character and concept.
I will say, to Carey's point, like, because you'll have like concepts and characters and stuff that are just floating around your brain for like weeks or months or years, and not know what to do with them. And then at some point something happens that just makes them click. And it's like, there's the runner's high. And I'm like, that's the writer's high, where it's like, finally, I know what to do with these two seemingly disparate things.
Yeah.
And now I'm going to go off. But it's like, as writers, I feel like we're always looking at other people, because a lot of times it's like, we're the outsiders, like we're the not cool kids. And so we just, you know, like by nature have to pay attention to our environment and everybody around us. And I remember, like, my dad was a farmer, and like he would make deliveries. And so summers I would work for him. And oftentimes when he would get gas at the truck stops, I would just like look around. And I remember there was like this girl who was my age who like got out of the truck and was like an 18-wheeler and was like checking the tire pressure, like an expert. And I'm just like, wow. And then her dad comes out and he's got snacks and stuff, and they get back in the truck, and I'm like, that's cool.
Yeah.
And I just like filed that away. And then like later I was like, oh, that father-daughter duo, what if it was like a father-daughter, you know, he's taking her, you know, with him over the summer, they're bonding, and then they get into like a hitchhiker situation.
Ooh.
Like like that kind of thing. And like he's got him like, okay, cool. And so I wrote that spec. But yeah, but like, you know, don't feel like, to the people who are watching, it's like, if something doesn't click immediately, don't get down on yourself. Just like file it away in your little writer memory bank, and it'll be there when you need it.
It's, you know, you make such a good point. It's like the way that Carey and I write, we're heavy duty into outlines, because if it doesn't work in an outline, it doesn't really work in your movie. But if you're executing your film and you're actually writing on the screenplay, and we run into writers all the time that go, oh, I spent 4 days just trying to come up with, what is this scene? What's it going to be? And we're like, but do you know the scene after that? Well, yeah, well, jump over the scene you don't know, write the scenes that you know, because then you're going to get to a point which is just like, oh, I need a setup back there for what happens here. And believe me, it saves so much time and far less anxiety than trying to prove it up. But I love what you just said, because those get logged. Those characters. Carey and I came across a woman one time It was at a bus stop that was just yelling at something we couldn't see. I mean, and it was a back and forth conversation.
Yeah, don't talk about mom like that.
Oh yeah, well, she's on medication now. It's all better. But it was so inspiring because what is she seeing that we don't see? And that just sparked one of our other, spec scripts as well. It's like, maybe she's the gifted one and we don't have the gift, and she's afraid of what she's being told or what she sees. So yeah, there's a lot of ways to be inspired by what you see. That's for sure.
It's funny, Akela, you're talking about all that space debris that floats around in your head that you're like, someday I'll be able to make it click and make it fit. And it's almost like the same we've found out in scenes where you write scenes and they're just not working. Chad and I put them in a file because we will find another movie that scene would work for and go, oh, it wasn't meant for this one, it was meant for the next one. So it's kind of like, these good thoughts and good moments and good character stuff is just great stuff to go to the well for when you need it,
How did Jeffrey, I have a question for you because my brother and I are huge fans of Final Destination. David Ellis, one of your directors, is such a good friend of ours before he passed away. But how did you as a writer keep thinking backwards on a zillion unique ways of people dying? I found that so interesting because there isn't a log truck I pass now where I don't think that those logs are going to slide off.
Right.
Jeffrey, I don't know if you know this, but like that thing is like so popular on like Instagram and TikTok with people who are just like, filming themselves driving and they're behind a log truck or they're behind something where wood is protruding and it's like, nope. And you just move over.
Yeah.
You have scarred my generation. Apparently like a lot of generations will not drive behind one of those trucks ever.
Well, it's interesting because I think, and this is kind of also just knowledge for because I worked at New Line Cinema for 11 years. I actually stayed there for like 3 years after I sold my treatment and they hired me to write my draft of the script. But in my original version of the script, death used the survivor's guilt against them. It was very Nightmare on Elm Street influence to have it where they committed suicides. And Alex still figured out like death's design, that they were dying or they would have died to try to fight back. But that version was very dark. And so this also speaks to like kismet in the universe, because the movie started off as just to get an agent. I wrote a X-Files spec script. It never went to the X-Files, but Scully's brother had the premonition, and my friends at New Line, Mark Kaufman, was like, don't send this to the X-Files, this would make a great feature. So another colleague, Chris Bender, took it to his managers, Craig Perry and Warren Zide. We developed it for probably a year with New Line, and they were bumping at the beginning about not showing death as a killer. So before they bought it, we did add like a little Angel of Death figure that popped up at the end. But then James Wong and Glenn Morgan, who have worked on some of my favorite shows, they were actually approached about it, and Bob Shea's like, what do you think about these guys? I'm like, they're freaking great. I said fucking great, actually. You can talk to Bob Shea like that. I'm like, they're fucking great. So they came up with the whole Rube Goldberg aspect of it, as far as like death being all around us and using things. So I always give them so much credit for that, because I feel like that version of the movie probably made it, well, not probably, I think it absolutely made it more palpable to people who aren't straight up genre fans. So they came up with the Rube Goldberg aspect of it, the kind of mousetrap thing of it. So, I'm eternally grateful to have that, be the version that came out. And then I also co-wrote the story for the second one. So I came up with a log truck idea when I was heading to Kentucky on driving home, and got behind one of those log trucks. So we'd had the general story figured out, the connective tissue with the first movie and things. But Craig Perry was just like, it was going to be a hotel fire. And Craig's like, that's just not a good, we need something better. And I was driving home and I got behind a log truck and I pulled into the next lane, and then I pulled off the highway and called Craig like out of breath. I'm like, what about a fucking log? And he's like, that's the opening. And so J. Mackie Gruber and Eric Bress also wrote the story and then the screenplay for the second one. So like we have shared story credit. And
Sweet.
I love what they did with the film too. I've loved whatever. That's what I particularly about this franchise. I kind of love what, you know, we've all kind of come full circle. Like I worked on the first two, and then James Wong and Glenn Morgan worked on the first one and third one, and Eric Bress worked on the second one and fourth one, and then we've kind of got a whole new team of superstars lined up for the rest of them. But
Oh my God.
David Ellis, to your point, I assume that's who you're talking about.
Yes, yeah.
He was so amazing, and we knew because he had a stunt background, and this is also a writing tip for audiences. Sometimes we knew that he had such an amazing stunt background that we didn't detail out the highway scene, the freeway pileup.
Oh,
you know,
wow.
yeah, they just wrote in the script a couple of lines of action because we knew that David would put it all together
Mhm.
That's
in the magical way that he did. And
Yeah.
so that's something, you know, it takes a village to make a movie. So it's always great when you have
Does.
these allies and collective minds coming together and just
Yeah.
making something better. So
Wow. I realize
And
we
to
all
think-
have 6 degrees of separation from James Wan. All of us.
We do.
or Wong, James Wong. So
Oh, Wong. Oh, I got the Wong guy.
Yes,
Sorry.
yes.
American Horror Story.
Yes, American Horror Stories and space. Yeah, so many Millennia and X-Files,
Got
so
it.
many good stuff. So.
Oh, yeah. I love James. He's awesome.
He's a
He's
blast.
good.
He was.
Caleb, were you gonna say something earlier? That's how you raised your hand. You were gonna say something?
Oh, I was just gonna say it's like it is so wonderful how like simplistic like these thoughts are, where you're just like, oh, I need a solution, and then you're driving behind the right truck at the right moment, and it's like, what if that snapped,
Yeah.
and then an opening is born, you know?
Yeah. I think that's like to reiterate what you said. I think that, you know, how to horror and how to writer, it's very important that we make sure we have a life and that we kind of experience
Mhm.
life, because a lot of these times we do get caught up in trying to figure out solutions. And I still do it. Even, you know, I listen to the sage advice that Chad and Carey just said about, you know, file it away, but I'll put it in that file and then I'll go back and pull it back out again and be like, I must solve this right now. But when I speak to other people, it is like, if an idea is not working, if a scene is needed, you know, sometimes you just go to what you have next, and something will inspire you in the real world. I mean,
you just leapfrog it, you know. It's and I don't know. I don't know if you guys write with partners or not. Carey and I've never not done that, and it's interesting because we started also when we were 16 years old, and we wrote a script, and we just thought it was so great, and it probably wasn't. But we had a huge break. We had,
was it?
and, gee, it was about twins. Go figure, you know. And anyway, we had a big break. There was a country music singer that lived across the street from us. His name was Hoyt Axton, and Hoyt wrote "Jeremiah Was a Bullfrog" and "Bony Fingers." And he was the dad in Gremlins. You guys are recognizing him. He was a big, huge actor and a very large man as well. But he took it upon himself we were 16, and he read it, and he goes, "Wow, I think this is pretty damn good." And we were like, "Whoa, really?" And he goes, "Yeah, I'm going to LA tomorrow. You guys should come with me, and I'm just going to introduce you to everyone I know." We're like, "Seriously?" We're just so grateful our dad wasn't home, because he would have said, not in your fucking life are you going to LA. And our mom was so cool. She's like, "Yeah, that sounds super great." And we came to LA. We met a bunch of people. He was working with Dennis Weaver on his show at that time, and met Dennis. And it birthed in us how much we wanted to do this. And we couldn't figure out what else to do. And that's why we're still doing it, because our advice to writers always is if you find your passion, you'll find success no matter what it is. And it doesn't have to be financial, but the analogy I give is we were filming in Romania a few years ago, overlooking Vlad's castle up on this hill. And I turned to my brother and I go, "We are getting paid right now to be here and to do this." And I go, "Oh, what a blessing." It was just fantastic. And we just can't imagine doing anything else. But, you know, writers, you guys should all work with each other just to even read each other's scripts and create gray areas. It just it helps so much. It's sometimes a lonely world until, you know, mom and dad will always love it, but you need the people that will tell you the truth, you know, that will help you make it better, basically.
Not grandma. She'll love everything you write. Everything.
There's that great John Waters quote that was going around earlier. It was like, you need someone besides your mom and the person you're fucking to like it.
Yes.
That's the
I
job.
always tell people that you have to, over the years, you have to kind of weed, you have to find the people who are going to give you great critique on the script that you've written, because there's a lot of people that will give you critiques on the script that they would have written. Like, if this is
Mhm.
my idea, then I think you should, and you know what I'm saying? And
Yeah.
then there are some people that just won't like anything. And
Mhm.
so over the years, you'll learn to kind of suss out where that advice is coming from.
Yeah.
Um, but you have to be open to taking it. Like, I feel like that's a thing that I see with a lot of young writers, myself included. Like, I thought my early stuff was brilliant, and I submitted it to New Line for coverage, and they were like, it got good coverage, but you should study more. And then I got to New Line and I dug up the coverage, and it was like, this was obviously written by a middle schooler. I'm like, I was in high school.
How dare you?
Dare they?
Oh
um,
my God.
and this goes back to something Akela had said earlier about, you went and you found scripts. And that's one thing that I tell writers now, because you can almost find almost any script online if you type in the title in PDF.
Mhm.
Um, because I feel like, because that's how I learned. I didn't go to film school, but because of my connection with Bob Shea, they would send me scripts all the time, and I would read them. And finding scripts, I think, in the genre that you love
Yeah.
can really help you formulate what works, what doesn't. Um, and since there's probably a lot of new screenwriters on here, like, I think that that's a crucial element to in watching films,
Yeah.
um, just to glean what works for you and what you see. And can you speak on, like, your learning experience as a writer? Like, um, did you go to school? Did you trial and error? Did you? Yeah, none of
Not
this.
at all. Yeah, we
You went to
Carey and I didn't
USC.
go to film school writing, so I've never took an English class. Just but we too read a bunch, any script we could get our hands on, we would read. And what we tell other writers today is find those movies, the scripts that you absolutely love, and compare the scripts to what actually ended up on the screen. And
Mhm.
Karen and I end up being, we're very descriptive writers, and that's just because we're greedy motherfuckers when it comes to, I want it to be my decision on the screen. Because if you don't write it in your script, someone else gets to make up their mind on what it is. And we say you have two kinds of writers. You have the Indians attack the fort, and then you have the writers that say 50 Indians, all on horseback, half naked, charge up to a 10-foot wall of timber. Arrows are flying, gunshots are flying, women and children are screaming from the inside, because they're going to ask you all those questions when you go into production or you get a director
Yeah.
on board. So do as much as you can without overwriting, of course, be economical in your space. But it's your decision right now, and you are the creator. And until you give that up for someone else to read, it's your story. It's completely your story. It's I mean, I only bring that point up because you can't be a lazy writer, because it never stops. Even in post-production, you're still sometimes writing and doing stuff. But we were mentoring a couple of young writers, and this one kid was like, we gave him so many notes on his first draft. I just saw him like, just shoulders went down. We go, it's, you asked for the truth, so we're just trying to help you get it better. And he goes, well, how many drafts am I going to have to do? And we went, come here. And we took him over to our computer. We opened up the first Conjuring or one of these things. I don't know. We probably did 67 drafts, not A to Z. You guys know how it is, like scene here, scene there, but all different numbers. And his mouth just fell open. And he was like, oh my God. Maybe I just want to direct. Maybe I'll just direct. And we went, okay, so there, that makes up. All right, now you know you're not willing to do that. So it's an interesting lesson. You can't be afraid of the work. You just really, really cannot, and push yourself for originality. I mean, I feel like I'm preaching to a bunch of writers, but that's just what works for Carey and I, honestly.
I gotta say, this is where, like, television, just to jump on the last, like, television helped me, because, like, when I was, a TV writer, and you get in those pre-production and production meetings,
Oh my
and
God.
you've got the line producer and props, and they're reading the scene, and then they look at you and it's like, how many kayaks in this scene? Like, that was an episode I wrote for Grimm, where I had just written, it's like, tourists pull kayaks off the top of their cars, and it's like, how many kayaks? 2, 3, like, what colors are they? Like, stuff like that, where I'm just like, it's two kayaks. I don't care what color they are. Okay. And so I took that onto the feature side, where it's like, there are some scenes I'm writing, I was like, I know they're gonna ask me how many cars car parks at this hotel. I know they're gonna ask. It's 5. Let's just do that. So yeah, sometimes you have to think about your your future line producer and the budget as well. I am in that situation now where I've already, like, I kind of try to write so that the crews won't suffer. Just having been that person again, and this is my television experience where I wrote an episode of Grimm for, it was La Llorona, and it was all the things we're not supposed to do. It was water, it was at night with children.
Oh my God.
Like no animals.
No animals, no animals. I didn't toss that in there. Swap that for, a night shoot with children by a lake.
Oh God.
But it was hell. It was hell on me. It was hell, and I know it was hell on the crew. So I did not do that again. Just trying to like save everybody's sanity. But like I did go to film school. I went to USC, and that was just like I got lucky and I got in after I applied, because I initially studied English creative writing. So I thought I was going to be a novelist first. Thought I was going to take the Michael Crichton route, write a novel, and then Hollywood comes calling, and then I'm like, I'm going to write the script then. But I had professors at my undergrad who were like, you want to write, so apply to graduate programs. And I applied to 2 creative writing programs and 2 screenwriting programs. Lo and behold, I got into USC, and I was not going to turn that down. So that's what got me out to LA, because I had no family out here. I had no connections. So I used school to break into the industry. And for me, it worked. I had some really great professors, and I got into the CBS Writers Workshop, which got me my start in TV. So it's, your mileage may vary. Like, you have options. Like I did use film school. They did not. We're all successful.
Yeah, you know what's interesting is because Chad mentioned early on, because we got very fortunate in television as well, right at the beginning. And as a TV writer, you write every day, and you write very fast. And yes. It's almost like if you play tennis every day, you're going to get better at writing. You're going to become a better tennis player. And it's the same with writing. And it's the difference between television and features, because TV people are like, I want it yesterday, and feature people are like, yeah, I want it, but take your time, right? Just don't rush it. And when we had done our first feature, House of Wax, we'd known that pitch so well that they said, just go write the pitch. You don't even have to outline it. Just go write that movie. And Chad and I flipped that around. It was probably 5 or 6 weeks. We were done. We knew it really well. Turned it in to Susan and Eric, and they're like, whoa, you get 3 months to write this thing. Don't rush it. And we're like, I don't know what else we do with it. And so they said, we'll read it, unofficial submission. We'll read it and we'll let you know. And Chad and I, great, okay. Don't hear anything Saturday, nothing Sunday, nothing Monday, Tuesday, nothing. And so now all the mind fucks are going on. Jesus, did we try to? I mean, this is horrible. We're not hearing back. And
I know it's immediately, oh shit, they hated it.
Yeah. I go, you go immediately to all the insecurities you have as a writer. And then we called them and said, hey, what's up? Did you hate it? And Eric Olson, who was working there at the time, goes, no, dudes, I called you, right? And we're like, if you called us, would we be calling you? What happened with the movie? And he goes, oh, we loved it on Saturday, gave it to Joel on Sunday, greenlit it on Monday. We're making this movie.
Yeah, we're in pre-production.
Of course, it's the writers are last to know, and it's Thursday. So it was, but I attribute our television fast-paced writing experience to turning in that draft, because we felt it was done. But of course, once you start production, as you know, that's when everything starts coming your way.
Well, also the cool thing about working in TV is that you see your words. You see your work getting made really, really quickly, and you learn very quickly what's working, what isn't working. For any writer out there, I would just encourage you to even take a little stab at it, just because it's such a discipline that you're on such a just your time is so limited, it just forces you creatively. Also, the fun thing that comes out of it, and I don't know if you had this on Grimm, but you know, in a writer's room and actually meeting other writers and participating with each other's ideas is really super rewarding. It was a wonderful experience, actually.
Yeah. And on top of that, like the TV experience, it helps you, like, you have to learn not to take things personally when you do get notes from your boss, who is the showrunner, and you have to learn how to collaborate. Like, you have to, because no one wants to be the dick in the room. You'll get fired, and no one will want to work with you. But like, it was really good education for like taking notes and collaborating, and it helps like in all of my like feature stuff. So yeah, it's like the TV discipline is like a good thing to learn.
Yep. Yeah.
I was the opposite. I didn't start doing anything until TV until like right before COVID. Worked on a NBC show, and it was like heaven to me because I'd been writing all by myself all these years, getting notes and notes and notes and notes, and then it was taking forever to get made. And then we're in a room. I'm like, oh, they're paying for lunch, and we're bouncing ideas off of each other. And it's like awesome. And you know, they sign off on everything at every step of the way. So by the time you get to writing an episode, then you're like, oh, the episode's already completely plotted out. Going back to like the outline stuff that you talked about.
Yeah, it's awesome.
It's fun. You know what? It's really because the collaborative process, and as being writing partners, we do it every day. But to get with other people and hear their ideas and their spin on certain things, that's why we encourage other writers to talk to other writers. You don't have to be in a television writing room to get what we're getting, because you just sit there and you say, hey, I got this idea, what if? And people start riffing, and then you help them with their idea and so on. So it helps build a stronger foundation of your work. If you already know a majority that see it the same way you do, or if they see it differently, maybe it's better, maybe it's not, but at least you're trying something, you know, gauging it before you've actually committed to it.
Yeah.
And would you talk a little bit, and we'll talk more creatively, but this is all professional / creative, but just about the importance, because I meet so many young writers who are like, I'm going to give this a couple of years. My first script is great. If it doesn't work out, I'm out of here. And I've always had to tell them like the importance of patience.
Yeah.
And you know, everybody thinks when a movie gets made or somebody shows up writing a show that they just started the year before or just moved to town and got working. Can you talk a little bit about the patience and the perseverance part of it that writers kind of really need to, because I feel like you need to feel like writing's your only calling.
Yeah.
You don't have to, not if you're going to make a career out of it starting young. Because like I didn't have, you know, I knew I wanted to work in entertainment. It was in acting and English were my two things. So I didn't study anything else. And my mom and everybody told me I was an idiot for not having a backup plan. But I think that perception, like this is my only.
Yeah, no plan B.
Yeah.
Just plan A. And we're very much like you. It's like, I never knew whether to be offended when our friends would go, God, I just can't believe how long you stuck with this. I'm like, thank you. I don't really know what else to do. When I go back to my passion, you know, success is when preparation meets opportunity. And so a lot of that applies to your screenplay. Like, for example, Carey and I wrote a movie 30 plus years ago, a spec script that was then well over $100 million. And it was read by William Goldman, who wrote Butch Cassidy. I mean, just a legendary guy. And he wrote us a note and he goes, sadly, boys, this is one of the better scripts I've read, and it will never get made because of X, Y, and Z. And at that time, effects were so expensive and all that. But for all you writers out there, we didn't sell it, but it got so much noise that everyone read it that we ended up with a 3-picture deal at 20th Century Fox. And we didn't even sell the script. And we've used that script continually through the years when someone goes, yeah, but can they write sci-fi fantasy? Can they do Harry Potter? Can they do, you know, blah, blah, blah. That always comes out of the closet. So your work is never gone to waste. And there's just so many times when we've been in a room and someone goes, I missed your pitch. I mean, okay, I didn't buy The Conjuring, but what else do you have? What else do you have? I want to buy something from you. And you got to just have it pulled out and ready to go. So, you know, I wouldn't be a one-shot Charlie. And to answer your question, Jeffrey, it's like, and you're either in it for the long haul or there's no timing to our game other than it just, when it happens, it happens. Some people, it happens. A young man that we were just mentoring over the pandemic was very fortunate, and he had a new way into selling a pitch because he had heard, oh, the town isn't buying pitches. And this just happened just before the writer's strike. And he wrote a short story, and he didn't write the ending to the story, and his agents send out the short story to everyone that he wanted to do the pitch. And if you want to hear the end to the short story, you have to hear the pitch. And there was a big bidding war that went on for this thing, and this kid out of the box sold it for over $500,000 at a time when no one was buying anything. So I also refuse to believe that, because if it's really good, it will sell. You know, it's just it's gonna sell.
So a couple of screenwriting questions. Horror tropes. Use them or avoid them at all costs. So I will let one of you, I feel like tropes are tropes for a reason if they
Right.
work, because I think people will sometimes mistake like structural things or things that have to happen in certain genres as a trope,
Yeah.
as opposed to something that's just a super cliche, like, oh, we need a jump scare, so we're going to throw a cat out of a closet. That's a trope when it's kind of lazy. But I think it's interesting that some things we consider tropes are just kind of, because there are no new stories. Storytelling has been around since the people first learned how to write and talk. So I think there's certain things that are baked into the DNA of genre films.
I think you have all the expectations. You have the jump scares that are expected, right? You got the, for instance, a haunted house. Yeah, the lights are going to flicker, the doors are going to open and close, the basement's going to be dark, there's a foul smell, there's footsteps in the attic, all of that. But we're not against using that as long as it's in a fresh, new way. Someplace, some way we have it, because those are there are certain tropes that work really well. Think about in Lights Out, just how simple that was, right? With lights on and off. But hey, let's throw something else in there, and suddenly it's a little creepy, right? So they can work to our advantage, but they work to our disadvantage. And we challenge writers all the time. If I've seen it before, it's and it's just thrown in there for a scare's sake, get rid of it. It has to be connected to your story or connected to your character in some way, or it's just a scare for scare, and you're going to make your audience numb because it's not we call them earned scares, right? It has to be part of your story and not just, people always ask, how many scares do I need in like the first 10 pages? And go, I don't know, write something that's scary. If it warrants a scare, put it in. Those 10 pages are totally engaging without a scare.
I think it's like we all know the tropes, and to Carey's point, it's like your way around them. Like if you know the road and you know where the speed bumps are, you know to slow down, or to do what go around it. Probably not good for the bottom of your car if you just like race right over it. But there are things that like I don't necessarily like in movies. For one, like dream sequences. With the exception of Nightmare on Elm Street, which took the dream sequence and like actually made it count, because like you die in the dream, like he can fucking kill you.
There you go.
You die horrifically in life. That was the twist, that Wes put with that, and it was very effective. And so like I'm using the dream sequences that I know I have to like go at character. Like this is what is gnawing at this character that they are then gonna like take into real life. And it is the demon is using these dreams to fuck with the character while also getting out in like good character stuff. And it's like I have found a way to make those things that I know I have to put in the script work for me and also work for the movie. So it's like, think about like what you hate. Is it a cat jumping out of a closet? How can you take that and you do it differently, or you do it better? And like, don't be afraid to be you. Because a lot of times, especially in this day, like I've had agents who are like, hey, you have to write this because that's what the market is, blah 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 blah. Like no one knows what the fucking market is doing. And a lot of times these movies are great and they're better when they are coming from a personal place, whether it's your own personal enjoyment or your own personal experience. So go towards that when you're looking to tackle these tropes.
Gosh, it's interesting you say that. Carey and I use this analogy all the time. Writing a good movie a scary movie is like hopping on a roller coaster. Basically, you know, you buy your ticket, you hop onto that thing, you know you're safe. You know you're safe, but you're about to get the shit scared out of you. And then all you do is just work on your tension, just, you know, just taking you to the top of that hill and then down. I mean, do something that's just going to scare the living crap out of you. Oh, but then I have to let you breathe. Otherwise, you're just so tense and you're waiting. And the best jump scares come out when you least expect them. And that's, I mean, that's a really fun thing to do, other than real initial scares where you're building the tension, and then have the encounter. But anyway, we always tell writers, like, just pretend you're on the roller coaster. You know, you're so relieved after that first gnarly turn, and they give you a little bit of a break, and then just take it away again. But I agree with you. It's just, the whole process is so interesting to me, and just really enjoy it. We love being scared, and so I think that's why we like this genre so much too. It's a great feeling.
So an interesting question just popped up about trusting your audience. You know, like, how do we feel as writers about trusting that the audience will get something versus sometimes what we're asked to turn into the studio, where they want us to really explain stuff because they don't think the audience is going to get it.
But you trust it.
I know that that's happened to me on pretty much every project, where it's like, well,
Mm-hmm.
we just need to we really need to explain this. And then you kind of hope it gets pulled out, some of the explaining. So I guess the question is, obviously we're writing to have somebody, whether it be a producer, I think, and also because there's so many new avenues to get stuff made out there. We don't have to, the old studio system has completely changed, I think, since we started off in it, you know. So there's so many avenues, but we are writing the script for the reader. But we want to convey what's going to be on the screen, but we have to kind of keep the reader engaged, and not have a bunch of questions. Otherwise, you know, they're more likely to be like, this is confusing, and I'm going to read the next script. So how do you kind of balance that?
Boy, I think for me, it's a fine line between underwriting and overwriting, you know, because too much you lose, and not enough, you don't get enough. So it's kind of like, you know, I feel like if you have something that's super, like, if you have to over explain something, and let me back up for a second. Readers are really smart, and especially horror readers are really smart. They've seen it, they understand it, they're jumping ahead of you, they're trying to predict it and trying to figure it out. How's this all going to go? So that's our challenge, because if you can trick the reader, you can also trick the studio as far as, oh, there's a surprise, right? Oh, I didn't expect this or whatever. But then you'll get, you know, you talked about earlier about notes. One of the first notes we got on the Conjuring is true story. They had 5 daughters, and the studio's like, oh, too many daughters, make it 2. And we're like, oh wait, you can look it up, and there's 5, you know, and this is kind of important. They're like, no, we're losing track of all of them. And this was before James Wan came on board. So we did it. They're writing our check, and we're okay, and we'll make it work. But we had 5 girls at different ages, all scared by different things, which was for us a godsend. It was great. But, you know, you have 5 teenage girls, all different age. I understand it was hard to follow. First meeting with James, he goes, I don't understand. Why are there only 2? Why did you guys only put 2? There's 5. And I go, wasn't us. It was a studio note. And he goes, I come on board with putting all 5 back in. So we went, yay, that's great. So the solution to that confusion from the studio, because they couldn't track all the girls, every time you saw their name, Chad and I put their age, 10, 14, 18. So you knew oldest to youngest who this girl was and what that journey was. And we're obliterated with ages through this whole script, but suddenly everybody understood.
Yeah, they followed it.
All 5 characters, and it was just one little additive. So that's what I mean by the teeter-totter, finding that line between not enough or too much, right? And just kind of like flattening it out.
I actually really like that question, because if your writing is done well, you should just trust the reader, honestly, and don't overwrite it. There's a lot of times, and I think we've all done this, where the writer just reminds you over and over and over again about the same thing, and that's the first thing we cross off when we're reading it. It's like, yeah, you've already set that up. I know that you're wasting space, and you're making me feel like I'm not smart enough to pick up on that. So, and a lot of that is inexperience, that you learn to just trust your writing. If you've done a really good job setting up your character, I'm going to remember your character. You don't have to remind me who that character is later on. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe you guys feel differently, but I just say trust. You have to trust your writing. If you don't, you'll overthink it. You'll overwrite it.
Yeah. You have to trust yourself, but also it's like, because we are in our heads and we know what we're doing. And a lot of times like that can be like very insular. It's like, I know what I meant. Why don't you know what I mean? Because you weren't in my head when I was reading it. I think for characters, especially keeping them straight, like one of the tricks I did learn at USC was a professor told me to like swap out the names. And if nothing changes and they sound the same, you're doing it wrong.
Oh, good idea. That's a good point.
Each character needs to sound different.
Right.
And like, and if you swap out Mike and Melissa, and it's like, okay, Mike and Melissa can both say this in this exact way, someone's got to change, Mike or Melissa. And like it's either like people I know and I'm hearing their voice in my head, because like my mom is going to say something different than my friend Tiffany. Like, so who is my mom character and who is my Tiffany character? Also, sometimes like they might not get cast, but also if there's a particular actor who has a voice that I like, I'll just imagine like that actor as maybe that character that I liked saying that line. It's just whatever you can do to give them a distinct voice so that when the reader is reading it, they know that's supposed to be that character and they're not confused.
God, that's such a good point. It's such a good point. I think about Karen and I just gave this advice the other day. It's like if you took a group of your friends that you know really super well and you put them in a room and something really gnarly went down. I mean, like Train to Busan, and just the inevitable happens. You have to know these characters so well. Who rises to the front? Who's afraid? Whose hand do you have to hold? Who's the whimpering? Who's the person that rises out of the ashes? And you could tell out of your group of friends, and they're all going to be very different because no two of your friends are the same. Well, that's the other approach that we do.
We also say, kind of Akela, what you just said was, people go, how do you come up with your characters? And we will take a version of actors or that we really like and melt them together and be a voice there. Or we'll say to a writer, say, tell me about your best friend, right? What do they wear? What are their lives? What kind of music they like? Do they drive a car, right? What's their beliefs? All of that. And say, that's how you have to know your lead character. Otherwise, they don't have a voice. You know the voice of your best friend, but you have to know the voice of your lead that way. So it's like, use those little tricks, the little swapping the character things that you just said is a great piece of advice. I think that's fantastic.
We have a couple of questions. I'm sure you've all got this question where people are kind of asking what the next trend we think is in horror, given the rise of like, we have the elevated horror. I love that word. As if, I'm sure we all get asked that a lot. I mean, my thing is it's hard to write for trends because I think people don't realize how long it takes to get a movie from like being bought to production. So by the time that movies come out, unless it's like a sequel where it's like the first one's doing really well and you've already kind of set up, you're going to go right into production on another one. It can be 3 or 4 years of production and development, or 5 years before a movie hits the screen. So by the time that movie's come out, if you're trying to chase that trend, you're following a trend that was like 5 years old already. Like but
I was just like, I've said it before and it was like kind of mockingly, because like when you have, agents or execs, it's like, this is what that's what the marketplace wants right now. As Jeffrey just pointed out, it's going to change when that next movie comes out and is a hit or is a bomb. I will emphasize, it's like when I was writing my horror specs on Luke Cage, I wrote the movies that I wanted to see on screen, like the stories that I wanted to tell, and that's what got my foot in the door with Atomic Monster, and that's what got me Megan. At the same time, I had another spec that was like what I like to write, which is like monster movie. There was gore, and I was specifically told by an exec at a company that will not be named, that's like, well, it's elevated horror. No one's doing gore right now, so this isn't going to sell. Like, you have to wait until the next horror movie that has gore comes out and is a hit for that to come back around. And I was like, that could be us. We could lead that charge. That was a no-go. But then I ended up writing Malignant with James Wan after Megan, and we all know that the third act is fucking bonkers, and it had gore.
Yeah,
it had gore. So I inadvertently ended up helping myself because now that spec has interest at another company that's like, oh hey, gore is back in now. That spec that
because
you
of
had.
you. I love
Yeah,
that.
you made that happen. You got the gore back in. Yeah.
But like this business is so risk averse, and no one wants to like take risks. So you have to take a risk on yourself. And again, this was years ago, and then I got Malignant. Malignant had gore, and now everyone wants to like. And Megan's like fun 80s style, 90s style horror is back. I have no idea what the next trend is. I'm just working on the films that I enjoy working on with the people that I work on them with, and hoping that the audience enjoys them. That's all you can do.
You know what?
And
Especially
you
if
are
it's
going to be miserable trying to chase the marketplace. Like,
Oh my
write something that's going to bring you joy, because if you do sell it, you're going to be in that process, and you want to have some kind of connection and joy from the thing that you wrote.
yeah.
yeah, but
Why
that
can't you
it's
be the one? You're right.
You bring up
You're the
such a
one.
great point of being, especially if you spec something, be ahead of the curve. Don't try to play catch up, because even what Jeffrey said, it's going to be 3 years. And if every writer's out there saying, oh, they're looking for the next Quiet Place, everybody's going to be trying to do it, and then it's going to take a lot of time. Then that's all going to change, and now you have 150 Quiet Place scripts out there,
Yeah,
and you're only going to make one. That's got to be completely different. So, dare to be different. I mean, we look for writers like that, on different projects. It's like, how unique is the writing? How different is it? How much does it, stay away from the tropes, Jeffrey, as you say, or how does it turn them upside down?
There recently, we were at a film festival, recently, a couple of years ago now, just before the pandemic. And we saw a little 9-minute short that was utterly terrifying. And it was a home invasion movie, but with a huge twist to it, all done in 9 or 11 minutes. And Carey and I approached the writer and the writers, and who also was the star, and the other guy was the director, and convinced them to write a screenplay because it was very original. I mean, home invasion movies are not original, but the twist in this was such a great statement. And we put them absolutely through the ringer, through the pandemic, 50 drafts, through it, and we fortunately ended up raising the money, got it made, shot it, and now hopefully had just submitted to Sundance if we're going to go there. But the reason I'm saying it is these guys were so true to the story they wanted to tell that it's what made it uniquely different and very, very powerful. So, I agree with you 100%. It's like, write the movie or the pilot or whatever it is that you want to see, because again, that goes back to being your voice. And that's how you can dare to be a little bit different and not read like everybody. Oh gosh, another monster movie. Great. Here we go. And I'm going to be that excited.
I get my bad moderator award now because we have less than a minute to wrap up. And no. They gave me a 5-minute warning, but I was enjoying the conversation. So we are going to have to wrap up. I don't know if this is one of those things where it like cuts off immediately. But before we do, I just want to first of all thank everybody who joined the chats and the panels. And I definitely want to thank our wonderful guests here, Akela Cooper, Chad Hayes, Carey Hayes. We hope that this has been insightful and inspiring. And Yeah, we're wrapped up now, so I think we're gonna finish. So thank you
Thank you,
all so
Jeffrey.
much. Take
It's
care.
like at the club where they turn on the lights and start
I
playing
know,
like
it's like, get
music,
out.
like live.
So interesting. I really enjoyed this, you guys. Thank you. It's just fun to be, to hear these other stories. We're so different, yet we're not. There's a lot of commonality that just makes it kind of a relief that you're not the only one going through all of this,
Oh, yeah.
when you do it. So
It's
anyway, I really a great panel to be on, and just
Yeah.
appreciated it very much. It was great. It's
Best
really-
best of both you guys,
Yeah.
It's been fun. It's been really
Yeah.
fun. Kayla, good seeing you.
Nice.
again.
Yeah.
Good
Wow.
seeing you guys again.
Yeah.
good to see you, Akela. I've seen you, but it's good to meet you guys.
You as well,
You
Jeffrey.
too. You
The
too.
Hayes
well.
brothers.
All right.
Good to meet you guys.
See you guys.
All right.
Bye.
All right,
Take care.
bye.